Hello and welcome to another quick little painting live stream. Finished painting up some cowboys recently. Let's pull a focus on that. And I liked them so much I thought I'd make some more. What I didn't do is buy another set. I could have done very easily, and I probably will end up with another set because they are cool models, but I went kind of in a slightly different direction and I 3D printed just the torso and legs for some more and used the plastic arms and heads from the set. Hey Nick, how you doing? This one is just off of Thingiverse, but the plastic arms and heads from the Dead Man's Hand set, the same set as all of these others. On a slightly more interesting note is this one, which is a similar kind of concept. Plastic arms and heads. But the torso and body here, I've actually got one of my Soviet models to compare. This one, the Soviet one, has a milliput sculpted body. And it kind of shows. It's not particularly good because I'm not particularly good at sculpting. This is the very first full body sculpt that I've ever tried, and it kind of came out okay. It's rough around a lot of the edges, but worth a try. But I made a mold of this and I casted a copy, and that is what this one is. And so I'll be painting these two up today. What does that actually bring me to with the cowboys? There's the 5 originals, there's the Frostgrave, 2 3D printed, and the kind of recast, well, primary cast of my own. That makes it 10. That's pretty cool. And I still have quite a few more arms, particularly the shotgun. I've got a shotgun or two. And having played Dead Man's Hand, shotguns are awesome. Shotguns are pretty brutal. And so, if I can get focus. And so I do want to have at least another one, probably 2, to have some more shotguns. Because that is just too good to miss out on. But let's get started. And my plan here for this model comes a little bit from how it's gone together, and you can just about see that the shoulder here with the arm, it's a little bit bigger than the torso, and it's the same on this side, and that's just because the two sets, like the plastic set and the 3D printed model, are slightly different types of scale. The same size, but this is more kind of closer to true scale, and the plastic's kind of a little bit more on the hero scale side of things. But what I can actually do is if I paint up the torso as a very tight waistcoat and then have these as like puffy sleeves, I think that'll work just as well. And so I do actually have some blue on my wet palette. I wonder if it's still alive. Well, it's a start at least. I've ended up with quite a lot on my wet palette paper at the moment. It's getting to the point where I need to change it, but I just kind of like the idea of pushing it till the very end. Just as an experiment, see how far I can push it. Usually I change paper a little more often than this. Let's get a little more mixed up. and then I'll probably mix in some grey as well, assuming my brush doesn't just immediately flay apart. Seeing a bit of spiking on my audio channel. Yeah, I think there might be some background noise coming through. If anyone can hear it, tell me what it is. Yeah, that might help. I'll raise it up a bit. That helps, certainly. I think there's still something in there. It might be the sound of a fan or something, computer fan. Although the computer station is underneath the table. Consider removing the chat lag. I can't. It is set to the minimum. It's usually around 30 seconds. Let me just double check that. Yeah, we're on normal latency, and I can't change it to fast at the moment. Yes, I have music in the background, but my microphone should not be picking that up. Yeah, it's not music. I've absolutely wrecked this headphone cable. It does not have much life left in it. We'll need to get a replacement at some point. Doesn't seem as bad visually, and I can't hear anything on the fold back. Right, let's bring in a whole bunch more grey and get a highlight going on. Might be a little bit harsh. might come back to the blue, but I want to get some of the other colours on. Before I make any decisions about how good I think it is. I have a suspicion that it's just a little strong, but it might be alright. Let's get some so actually quite a lot of the detail of the STL has come through on this print. It's strangely good. It's still got that kind of micro texture, that kind of very rough surface that's just soaking up paint. I imagine it's very similar to how MDF, like there's all those terrain kits that you can get. I imagine it's similar to the way that they kind of soak up paint. Actually, at this point, Paul, how are you getting on with those many very large buildings? That's sort of the effect I was going for. But, well, no, I don't like it. Paul is indeed Ratman, yes. Some ochre for some highlights. There's quite a lot on the back actually. Given that this model is leaning forwards, the back's going to be fairly well visible, so can put a little extra effort in, a little more than you might usually. The origin of screen names. It can be fun to decipher where stuff has come from. Was it the demo for Diablo 3? I think you have told me the story before. and you had the demo, and the Rat Men were in the demo, and you played that a lot. Is that right? You're not an OG gamer unless you've played Pong. Pong isn't even the first computer game, not by about like 15 years, I think. Something like that. Speaking of, the shareware version, right? I mean, sharewares were often used in the same capacity as demos. Kind of get people to share around the free version so that people want to buy the full version. There's one really early computer game that I think my dad told me this story. It's a brilliant concept. I don't actually know what the game was, but it was something along the lines of Moonlander. Like, you have the left, right, and thrust control, and you have to land a ship without crashing horribly. Except this is back in the day before, everyone had computers at home. And this was really before the time that there were computers in like arcades. And so the way this game was played is you posted in your instructions to the computer, and the games company would enter it in, work out what the computer would do, print it out, and then post it back to you. And potentially this could go on through a few iterations per game, I guess you'd call it still. And it's such an interesting concept that you would play a computer game by post. It's a little bit, I can see if I can smudge up the metalwork a little bit on that. Just that one highlight is just a little too strong. Might have to go in with a panel line there. Yeah, that works. Yep, see you in a bit. Right, black trousers. Let's see if this black paint is still any good. Yeah, I'm gonna go with probably not, but let's see how far we get. Well, me of little faith. It seems to be absolutely fine. Trying to discern where the top of the boot is supposed to be in this 3D print. It's a little hard to tell. I think there's actually some support material still stuck to it, which is not helping. I own an airbrush. Hang on. My chat was in the wrong place. Yeah, I own an airbrush. It took me a year and a half to get it working because it was missing a component. And everyone on the internet said, oh yeah, you just need to thin your paints properly, and oh yeah, you just need to do this or that or the other, and oh yes, you need to use beeswax, whatever. And in the course of, like I say, a year and a half, I sprayed exactly 0 models with it. I went back several times and just couldn't get anything out of it. And then Ratman actually, we went through it. We took it apart down to its component pieces. Realised that there's this. It was a rubber seal that was missing, and we dismantled a separate one and replaced that compart, and it works. But I'm just still in the place of it's a complete mess of a horrible piece of technology that didn't work for a year and a half, and I haven't really given it a fair shout now that it is in working condition. Just a psychological thing. Just one of those cheap ones. It doesn't have the expanded tank, so it's the kind of running constantly whenever you're using it, which is fine because I don't really use it, and I don't see myself using it for an extended period of time, which is what the big tank is for. It's so that you don't run the motor constantly and overheat the thing. But if you're just working on a primer layer for a bunch of models, or like a base coat for a bunch of models, then you're not really using it all that much. In one go, I mean. Trying to pick out all of these folds in the trousers, but it's somewhat difficult. I think I'm just about getting the effect I'm after, but it's I could blame the micro texture again. I actually have some models coming on the way. Some Celts. Historical models from Warlord Games. And I plan to use the airbrush on those because there's a lot of skin, like bare-chested, burly dudes. And so if I can prime them with the airbrush, just to test out the airbrushing, see if I can actually get it working properly and nice and smooth. Because while technically I know it works, that doesn't necessarily mean that I know the ins and outs of how to use it properly. So that'll be my kind of learning curve. And then on top of that, probably I'll do the skin, or at least start the skin with the airbrush, and then move back to a real brush. When did it start getting called an airbrush? Because I've always known it as a paint gun. And like kind of fairly recently it's just universally being called an airbrush now, which is kind of misleading because it's not a brush. I get where that term has come from, because it's a kind of an alternate tool to a brush. It is the kind of air version of a brush. But it's weird. Names change. It's fine. I'll get used to it. There's a lot of artifacting on these boots. Yeah, I'm not really sure what I can do to recover them. There's not really much in the way of like intended texture. There's a few little folds down here. There's a few folds in kind of the wrinkly of a leather boot, but then all of this is just chunks of support that I did not sand away. Well, let's give it a go. Let's see what paints I've got for a highlight colour. Yeah, I'm wondering, one of my prints recently, the the raft peeled up. The print was still successful, like every part on it came out, and I'm just wondering if this is one of them. Even though it successfully printed, maybe it wasn't 100% successful in some of the features on the boots have been squashed kind of as the raft as the raft peeled up. If the boots were right there, they've been compressed slightly. It's a possibility, but yeah, I have no way of knowing. Let's get the Skinner base coat. Get the Skinner base coat. That is a sentence. Give the Skinner base coat. This is looking very desaturated compared to the others. The black and the brown, not like the blue I intended to be desaturated, but just everything about the model is a lot less rich than the interesting. It's that gosh darn 3D printed microtexture, I tell you. Need some more of this brown. I may resort to a wash at some point. Not on the blue, but on the brown, just to give it a bit more. I mean, a bit more saturation, but to kind of darken it as well. I've just painted brown all over that trigger guard. What should we paint his scarf? A lot of this set has reds and blues. We've got kind of strong red and blue over the whole model. So maybe red for his little scarf there. Let's see what a wash does. Let's oh, this should be fun. This blob here is a wash. However, washes do not survive very long on the wet palette, and so I guarantee you this won't be any good. Yep, that just disintegrated. That was nothing. Come on. There we go. A nice fresh blob of some brown wash. And we do the focusing dance again. Just give me a dial. One of the camera apps I've got on this phone, on the other phone actually, it has a focus bar, and you can just drag it along to whatever you want and leave it there, rather than having to trip the autofocus 5-10 times and it kind of never quite being right. That wash is really going well on these. I'm actually gonna very specifically come in and kind of grab some extra in there. What do I do at the front to make it match? Yeah, it's taking pretty well here. Something I noticed about how the 3D printed models paint compared to other manufacturing types. Wet blending doesn't work at all. But washes, they work, but they behave slightly differently. And one of the differences, I would say the main difference is, and this is kind of a guess based on my assumption that it's kind of a micro texture causing it, that rather than just pooling, which it does still do, more of it gets grabbed by the micro texture. And so it acts more like a glaze or a filter than just acting as a wash, which is generally going to focus or generally going to be pulled mainly towards the recesses. Which is exactly what I wanted for this model, and has come out fairly well. Maybe a little harsh. We can try and smooth that out. We'll let it dry and then we'll go and have a look. This red scarf is so much more vibrant than the rest of the model. Over there. Why can my brush not keep a point? Yeah, that does actually balance it quite nicely. Let's get some of that light brown for his belt. Belt and holster. That's going to disappear, isn't it? That is a little bit kind of, it just looks like a bad layer on the jacket. It doesn't look like a separate part. Can I, how would I do this? Actually, strangely enough, this is working visually. So what I kind of planned to do there was, let's just move the camera over here because I keep drifting, paint in a black, almost like a panel line, just as a point of separation. But what it's actually doing visually is it's jumping the gap of the leather belt, and it looks like the kind of the top of the trousers, which actually makes sense given this type of belt and how it was kind of how it's worn. The kind of gun belt was worn over the top of other clothing. It wasn't like you didn't just have your holster attached to your normal trouser belt. I mean, I'm sure people did, but that's not the classic style, and it's really, really weird how that's actually worked out. Yeah, kind of fixes it. Arnold, hi, how you doing? For some reason this has gone all lumpy, and it's probably where a support was attached. If I can just kind of like that, just overpower it. There's definitely something in the middle there. I'm pretty sure it's where a support was went in. Yeah, I mean that kind of does the job. Good. I am still alive. I've applied for a few kind of interesting jobs that actually fit me, which is a bit of a change, and hopefully a bit more opportunity of me actually getting them. How did I end up in the Wild West? That's actually a good question, because I don't have a lot of connection to cowboys and westerns and that kind of thing. Westerns was never my thing when I was younger either. It really is this plastic set. It's all because of this plastic set. I was looking around on various websites for some models that I wanted. I found Bad Squiddo Games, which has some female models, but like correctly proportioned and properly dressed female models. And I was looking around on there, and they sell the Dead Man's Hand game, and they come with these models. And for £15, you get a box of 10. So £1.50 a model, and I'm not sure what that's in other currencies, but for £1.50, you're probably getting a Space Marine knee pad from Games Workshop. Maybe not quite that bad, but you're never getting a box of 10 of anything from Games Workshop. Even the Catechins are more expensive than that, and they just seemed interesting. And it's like, I don't have cowboys, and they're £1.50 a model. I'll give it a go, see what they're like. And it turns out that I really like them, and I've ended up 3D printing some bodies so that I can use up the spare arms. Alright. Let's get his hat. What should we do with his hat? There's a lot of dark on this model. You know what, I've just had an idea about the trousers. Because what I think I can do and make it tie in quite nicely together. This is a trick I use on my Tanith, because they have black uniforms, is highlight them with grey, and you can highlight them quite harshly, and then go over it with a black wash. And I generally don't like to paint with washes. I know I've said that, having now used 2 separate washes in different parts of this model. Yeah, I think it's just that washes work really well on 3D prints, and so I'm quite happy to use them. Wandering Celt, hi, how you doing? Wandering Celt says, Stargrave crew. Stargrave. I have not played Stargrave. I have not played Frostgrave either. I would like to. The Stargrave models seem really cool. I think the one reason why I haven't kind of gone in on Stargrave just yet is because there's nothing there that I don't have something similar. Like, obviously I don't have any of the exact same things, but I've got a lot of things that are kind of similar. And so there's nothing that's really drawing me in models wise. Let's see if I can fix this focus again. Oop, nope, never mind. Worth a try. What was I saying? Stargrave? Stargrave. Yeah, Stargrave seems cool. I would like to give it a try. What I also am going to give a try is on this hat. Just skipping painting it entirely and just giving it a wash over the primer. and seeing how that looks. Nice aesthetic on the StarGrave models bought on Kickstarter. Yeah, good. It's one of those things that I will inevitably get around to StarGrave. There is kind of no keeping me away. Interestingly, the wash doesn't want to stick to the primer in the slightest, so I might have to leave that alone for a bit. And kind of let it dry, and then we can work on something else from there. I was going to say let's work on the skin, but I've got a kind of ring of wash around the bottom of the hat now. Let's get rid of that. Let's move on to skin. Every single time with a P3 pot, you always get paint on your thumb. 100%. I like the paints. I don't think there's a P3 that I've had that has ever been, sorry, kicking around the camera, an absolute disaster. That said, I haven't tried their yellow. Yellow's always bad, no matter what brand. There's somehow too much water on my brown paint here. It's causing me a little bit of difficulty. I'm just trying to control it as best I can. I'm going into full concentration mode for this. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves in the chat. Or talk about what you're working on at the moment. If anyone's got any painting on the way, any model making. What do you got going? If anyone's working on a jet bike, I am interested in that specific topic. What's going on there with this? I need to put this somewhere where it's not reaching across the camera for it constantly. Not convinced I know what's going on with the mouth. It wasn't taking paint for some reason. There's a raised lower lip, and the upper lip's behind a big old moustache. Don't know. Let's give it another try. Let's give it a minute to dry first. Let's do everything else. Black Shmi by Giants in Miniature. Cool. I can't pronounce it. Can't pronounce it at all. Actually, that is something that that came up recently for me. Given that I've been painting models for so long, and I have quite a few, there's very little that I don't have. Like something like, if you want some medieval knights, or if you want some archers, or if you want some science fiction infantry, or some aliens, I've got just about anything you could possibly want. White. Built a jet bike model from Capital Warzone 1990. Classic jet bike. And shark bikes. Cool. So the specific reason why I mentioned bikes, and I brought this up in the stream last week, is that I'm currently writing a jet bike racing game. Because in the tabletop scene at the moment, there's almost no racing games. Can you please be a nice sharp point? I'm trying to paint an eye here. Yeah, so without a good racing tabletop game to already exist, I set about making my own, and I think I've come up with something that's actually quite a lot of fun. I've written out the full rule system as a practice. Giving this guy a white moustache because that seems fun. I've kind of given it a once round rolling dice to see just if it works. And I thought that I would just end up like having a few turns and then kind of going, yep, it works, need to play test it. What I ended up doing was I played an entire race by myself, just rolling dice and thinking about how the rules I'd made actually applied to moving the models, because I think I came up with something a little more interesting than like move X distance and and then pivot once. Yeah, those eyes are nearly straight. So I'm going quiet halfway through talking because I'm trying to paint these eyes. They're alright. They're not the worst eyes I've ever done. I think what I can do is border up the nose. Will help. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, so where was I? I was talking about jet bikes. How far into the story did I get? I've no idea. So I've played a race by myself, and I genuinely think that the rules are, for me at least, interesting enough to keep me wanting to play it. And I actually played a full race when I only intended to play it like 2 or 3 turns. I ended up playing about 20 turns because the turns are so quick. It's kind of one of the deciding factors of how I wanted to make the rule system is I wanted it to seem like a quick, fast, action-paced game, even though it's a turn-based game. And I think it achieves that quite well. Make sure you have different options of jet bike, heavy to light. Yes, that's one of the kind of extra things that I'm writing in at the moment. There's a straight into playing, like quick play version of the rules. That is that everyone has the same bike and it's a completely level playing field. No weapons, no damage, nothing, just a straight up race. And then I want to add in like you pick a character to be your racing rider, controlling the bike, and you have different bikes that you can pick from to give you advantages and different disadvantages. And so yeah, some will be stripped down, lightweight, high speed kind of machines, and some will be heavy, powerful things instead. Just adding in some like pretty much panel lining for the fingers there because they were kind of disappearing into each other. So another thing I want to add in that I haven't quite got to yet is fancy stuff with terrain like jumps, because I'm using inspiration of not just like real motorcycle racing, but also like computer games and science fiction settings, and that's what is it, F-Zero, Wipeout, those type of games. I'm kind of working in that same thematic space, if you want to consider it that way. You know what? The primer with just the primer with just a wash on top for the hat actually kind of works. I want to paint that kind of ring a different colour. What colour should we do with that? I want to be boring and do it black. There's a lot of dark on the model. Maybe I do want to do it black because it contrasts with such a light hat. Yeah, let's try it black. Let's try it black. Which means I need some more black. That ran out a moment ago. Yeah, I think I covered everything for the bike game. I have it in a playable condition, and I just want to get some other people to give it a go. Jet bike racing in a Space Hulk. When it comes to the setting, I actually do have a specific setting in mind, but it's lax enough, or rather it's varied enough to be used in a lot of different places. So it will have primarily a fairly barren, dusty, oxygen-less world. All the people live in habdomes on this planet, but the outside world, it doesn't have enough oxygen for you to be able to breathe, but it does have an atmospheric, well, it does have an atmosphere and it does have pressure. And so as long as you're wearing like an oxygen tank, that's all you need to go outside and walk around and work and build and fly jet bikes. But there absolutely can be stages, I guess you'd call it, in racing, where you have abandoned cities, abandoned buildings, the wrecks of spaceships. That black does look pretty good, actually. I'm going to stick with that black. Yeah, abandoned spaceships that have either that they've crashed on the great with wash. Star Wars will hunt you down. I actually did realise what I was kind of when I was first coming up with it. It's an awful lot like pod racing. It's like fancy flying racing machines out in a rocky desert place. It's kind of it's not based on the pod racing from episode 1, but it's certainly there are parallels that can be drawn. I think that's I want to do something with the sleeves because it's not quite. I think it is the sleeves that's letting it down. Yeah, let's go at it with maybe some slightly richer blue, because the whole thing's looking just a little bit too desaturated. So let's get some saturation back in the shadows. Oh yeah, that looks much better. Yeah, that's what I was missing all along. Yeah. Yeah, that is so much better. It's not very neat. Where's my focal range? There it is. It's not as neat as I would like, but it's getting there. The end of this sleeve is an absolute travesty, so let's... Yeah, that's about right. Given that it will be viewed from this angle for most of its life. I think that was pretty good. So what I will do, I'll use up what remaining, if I can get it off my painting handle, I'll use up what remaining black I have on the base. Yeah. What remaining black I have is none at all. So this is just a base coat for crackle paint to go on top. This is an extremely rough texture because this base was 3D printed upside down, and I've deliberately not cleaned up the supports very well, and so there's a lot of craggy, broken bits sticking up that kind of almost nearly look like rocks. And I'm wondering, when I put the crackle paste on the base, by the way, all my cowboys are getting crackle paint on the bases like that. So once I put the crackle paint on top, firstly it has pigment in it, so it will colour everything, but it'll also pull away, and maybe, I think that was a chunk of resin, maybe it will just look interesting enough. Desert yellow is my basic colour of choice with a dry brush of ash grey. I assume those are paint names. It's very hard to understand what a colour is when you refer to just the paint names. I much prefer to just say, like, desert yellow is fairly obvious. That's a tan. Ash grey could be anything from a charcoal to a very desaturated light grey, almost white. Alright, well, let's put that on the side now that we've spent over an hour on him. I think he's most of the way to being done. Maybe the odd touch up here or there. But we can move on to the other one with my cast torso that I sculpted myself. Intended for my Soviet models, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream. However, I think that that's really good kind of Undertaker vibes. He's coming to town, grabbed the saddlebags off his horse. And he's like, who's in my shop? So, desaturated stone grape, yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. A lot of my... Even though I have 2,000 models, there's two basing schemes that come up on almost all of them. One of them is just grey, like a medium grey with maybe a slightly lighter grey dry brush, if they're lucky. And then kind of a muddy effect, which is usually my Tanith get this, and that's a very rich dark brown with a lighter brown dry brush on top. It has been said many a time, I really need to put a lot more effort into my bases, and there's some truth in that. Right, I'm not sure if there's enough of this paint to do the whole coat, but what I'm doing here is I'm mixing up some black and brown, dark brown with black, and painting the whole cloak with this, or them. Great coat, sorry. Yeah, there's not going to be enough. I'm going to have to make up some more. So mixing in black and brown, and then highlighting up into the dark brown. It sounds strange to highlight into a dark colour like that, but it actually gives a very interesting effect that I quite like. Alright, so this is going to end up being a lot darker because that's mostly just black I added. But there's still some... it still looks like dark brown, it doesn't quite look black yet. Miniature needs a measuring tape. Classing West... Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yes. Come into town and it's like, nah, you look like trouble. Best measure up for a coffin because you're not going to last. Absolutely. I don't know how to do that on this model though. I suspect maybe there's another model. I've still got some more arms. I've still got more arms to use up. So, other than a big coat, what's the classic Western Undertaker look? It's more of a suit, a kind of a shirt and waistcoat kind of look. Kind of maybe a slightly bluey grey. And make anywhere near enough, even the second time. And my poor brush is not happy about this. Let's grab some more brown from back here, because we'll need. Sorry, all this working off camera, sorting out these paints. this will be a completely different colour. Yeah, it's not that far off. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't really looked at Wargames Illustrated Giants. Giants in miniature. Right. That's something I may have to look up after the stream. One thing I had wondered when it comes to this particular sculpt, because I sculpted it myself, of course, as I mentioned, is the differences between painting the Milliput version and painting the resin, and this is a resin cast version of it. So how will the material affect the painting? Because in theory, the surface texture of these two, because of the silicon molding process, should be identical. So any imperfection that I sculpted in, of which there are many, because this is my first torso body that I've sculpted. Actually, that's not true. It's my second. But yeah, in theory, all of the imperfections at the surface, the texture should be the same between the two. And so the differences are, the question I'm asking is, does Milliput and the casting resin have any effect on the on painting? And truth be told, I painted the other one a couple of weeks ago, so can't remember. But that's a test that I want to do at some point, is kind of different materials behaving, or paint behaving differently on materials made of different models, which is the type of thing that my brain finds extremely interesting, and I'm sure everyone in chat's fallen asleep, because who cares about such minutiae as this? But I'm of the firm belief that there is a difference. The real challenge would be, the real test would be to sculpt a model, to make a high temperature silicon mold, not just any old silicon, but the high temperature stuff, to then mold it with resin and then mold it with pewter. My brush is really not playing along. now start highlighting. Let's throw in a little bit of, or a little bit more of the brown into the mix. Yeah, I can tell all of the lumpy, unpleasant bits that I've left when sculpting. I'm not convinced that there is any possibility of making this model look really good, just because of how poor the sculpting is, which is one of the reasons why I use the plastic heads. It's kind of a decent match, because the part of the model you want to look the best is the face, is the weapon, is the hands. And I've not sculpted any of that. I've just done the boring bits, the torso and the feet. And honestly, the feet are the worst bit. I think that's without question. Oh no, that roughness over his shoulder, that's not from my sculpting. That's from the super glue. Can't blame it all on my terrible sculpting, just most of it. Let's grab just a tiny bit of a lighter brown. And let's just get some very subtle cross-hatching over, maybe even just one-way lines, just in some choice areas. Doesn't necessarily look good by itself, but we shall paint the rest of the model and see if anything can be improved upon. I realise that this entire model is going to end up being pretty solid brown. But that's okay. I do have the habit of using too much brown, but I haven't actually used a lot of brown in this set so far. well, that's a lie, I've used a lot of brown, but I've used a lot of colour as well. So I'm allowing myself the luxury of using a lot of brown on this last one. Ah, that's interesting. Can you see that? That is an air bubble in the resin. How did an air bubble stay in the middle of the model? The mold for this part is upside down, so the feet are at the top. The neck is directly at the bottom. And so this, kind of the waist to the belt line, is the middle. I guess there's just enough texture in the mold at that point to grab onto it. Gonna go for probably get brown wash just on the saddlebags because they're going to end up too light any other way. Just with the paints I have on hand. How do I get into the underneath of this pot? Yeah, I guess that'll have to do. Not really visible, so I don't really mind. I have to stop soon because my brush is really playing. It's got a lot of short hairs that are sticking out on the side. I don't think I've had this brush for all that long, and yet it's acting as if it's been heavily used and worn away. I wonder how many models I have painted with it. Certainly a few. I don't necessarily think that somewhere is unrealistic, but just quite this much. This guy has some absolutely ridiculous sideburns. Very 1870s. The very height of fashion. overall it's not going to end up looking terrible. It won't look amazing, but it won't look terrible. Right, let's get that wash down. Is that black or brown? That is brown. Excellent. Just what I wanted. Hopefully what I can do is, once the wash is down and dry, I can come back with the same original paint and kind of highlight it back to where it was. Although the wash is going to do a lot of the hard work for me. Particularly in this sculpt. This sculpt is grabbing it nicely. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's all it needs. While that dries, let's get some metalwork down. I wonder if everyone's gone or if I've disconnected. Who knows? So over here on the saddlebags, there's actually these buckles. I really want to paint those in the silver. But I know as soon as I do, I'm going to do it anyway, even though I know it's a terrible idea. The wash is going to grab it. Or rather, the paintbrush will grab the wash and mix the metallic and the dark wash all together. Aha! Hello, brass. Brass on the buckles. That would be good. I don't have a good brass. I've got a rose gold, but I don't really have a particularly good brass. I need to mix up some. Take the rose gold and mix it up into some slightly different variants. I just need to play around with mixing it and see what happens with different colours. Because I know it mixes well, but I don't know. I don't have enough experience with it. Rose gold with a wash. Yes, that does actually look pretty good. I have used, I think it was in our contrast video we did on Back to the Brush. I painted some, I think I painted the Dwarven banner with the rose gold, and then used the brown contrast paint over the top as if it was a wash. And that worked fairly well. Like, a wash would have done the job as well. Yeah, that's as good as I was hoping out of the sculpt. I can see flecks of the original primer left in it. I wonder if they're all air bubbles or if they're tiny folds in the Milliput, the original Milliput. It could be either. Well, let's get some skin done. What's happening to my... I think it's because I'm right at the edge of the palette with this, with my skin paints. I find it interesting that this hand with the saddlebag is tiny compared to the hand with the like the other hand, even though they're from the same set. It's probably about kind of 75% the size, something like that. I'm going to grab some more of the skin paint. Let's move just to the other side, see if I can have some without too much water. Yeah, so this hand here is very small. Like, that's almost kind of 1/56 true scale. And then this one is probably around the average size for a hero scale model. Of course, hero scale being massive in comparison to what it should be. Undertaker tool bag. Yeah, he's got his tape measure in there. Tape measure, hammer, nails, wood saw. Job done. Is that a beard and a moustache that he has? I can't even tell. Let's pretend it is. Ugh, let's get some more paint and then we can pretend that it is. Oh yeah, it certainly is. Because that, everything that was raised up being painted in a different colour now actually looks not terrible. Take on scale is that the age before industrialization, bags, clothes, and remaining items were handmade. So variation is actually realistic. However, I was talking about his hand, not the bag. I'm talking about the hand that's on the bag. That hand. And let's grab another hand from the same set. So these two hands are from... Where's my focal range? There it is. These two hands are from the same set. Can you see the difference in size? Bear in mind that this one, his hand is out, like outstretched and kind of flat-fingered, whereas this one is balled up in a fist. And so this, if this hand was outstretched, it would be even bigger than it is. So that's kind of what I meant. The saddlebags being bigger or smaller, you're absolutely right. I agree with that. But one of his hands, because his other hand is the same size. Kind of, there you go, about the same size. Is there anything else I can do to the hand? Shovel hands. He has a shovel hand, not he doesn't have a pair of shovel hands, he just has the one. Right, eyes. Let's see about getting some eyes. I've got some white still from the previous eyes. Whites to his eyes. That's some pretty good eyes. in comparison to most of this set, those are actually really good eyes. I mean, the way that I painted them, not how they're sculpted. Alright, just the hat and the boots. So what colour for the hat? Do I go with a pure black? Oh, you can really see how much trouble I was having with this. Ugh. I will eventually get better at sculpting, both physical and digital sculpting. Keeping with the Undertaker aesthetic, and given that the whole model is fairly dark, let's just go all the way and go black, and then I can always highlight it into whatever colour I choose. But let's just see how a great big comedy black top hat looks like on this guy. Yeah, we can highlight black up into grey. That might actually work. Another jump to the black paints. Not too much. I don't want to load up the wet palette with so much because I'm about to throw this paper away because it is old and all of the paints on it are kind of separated and nasty. And just putting more paint on top of the pile is not always for the best. Right, let's get some grey. Some edge highlights, some scratches at the top. Yeah, I like it a little lighter. I think I might go even lighter than this actually. Let's use all of my remaining white. Let's see how very light grey. Yeah, I'm liking that. Still a lot of the black visible, but it's really looking like a grey. Yeah, it looks alright. Happy with that. sidetracked by other details. Yeah, we're kind of running to the top of time, so I'll probably finish this off stream. But yeah, it's pretty much looking how it's going to look when finished. If anyone else is in chat, or if for anyone who is in chat, ask any questions now, and I'll answer them before the stream finishes. I'll give you a couple of minutes to get those questions in, and then we can relax for the rest of the evening. I want to just paint the band for the hat, but what colour? I don't want it to be a bright primary colour, but a brown or a black is going to disappear. Don't think white. Maybe I do want white, and by white I mean the way I usually paint white cloth, which is by painting it brown and then highlighting up into white. The handle that I'm using is my own design. I am currently working through some iterations to get the 3D print files for sale. This is my third variation. This is my second variation, which has seen a lot of use as well. This version I painted over 200 models on, and the only problems I ever had with it, do I have a model to show an example? Kind of. If I can get the current one off. So if a model has something that sticks out quite far, so if you see like this edge here, it's not really sticking out, but if there's a sword or a spear or something that sticks out, it can get caught inside here while you're spinning it around. And really that's the only issue I've ever had with this version. After painting 200 models, this one, you'll notice that it's actually missing the kind of arm component here, and I do have the bits of it because this broke, unfortunately. But this broke after 200 models, and it's broken because of a printer flaw, not because of the print, not because of the design. You can actually, you're never going to see it on camera, but you can see the inside this where it's broken. Individual lines of the 3D print are separating from each other, so it's not because this is too thin or the angle's wrong or something like that. It's because the original 3D print was weak. So running this off on a better printer than mine, you would have no problems at all. And even so, this version has some reinforcement. Again, this is horrible, nasty stuff because my printer's not very good, and this is the overhangs anyway. I've added in some extra rigidity, and this piece here is just so much thicker as well. I don't think it needs it, but I did it anyway. And this one's been going strong. So this one, the black one is version 3. The version 1 had a lot of problems. It was the wrong shape, it was the wrong side, it was the wrong size. Invested on Kickstarter for a painting handle. Well, you should have waited, because I'll have the files for this one up eventually. Give it another 4 or 5 years. I think that this is kind of overcomplicated for what it needs to be. Like, you can just get a stick and glue the model to the top of it, and you'll be fine. But the thing that this does is it gives me the ability to change angle. Like, you saw me turning it upside down to paint the inside of the hat. Kind of, I could turn this upside down and I can paint the underneath of the hat just with my normal grip rather than having to twist around. And it's for little things like that. And also for eyes, I can position the model exactly like this and get 2 fingers against my thumb, so this is all nice and stable for when I'm painting eyes. Little things like that. Ah yes, speaking of painting little things, I hadn't actually finished the this. Because I was just getting sidetracked. And sidetracked is basically what I always do. That's why these streams are fun. There we go. And I need some. Just redo that black there. And yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I'll do the boots and base off stream. Eyes are my bane. I used to have a lot of trouble with eyes, and there's a few different pieces of advice that I could give about eyes, but the one that I always come to, because I think it's the one that is counterintuitive enough that people don't want to do it, but it is genuinely the best way to do it. Let's get some focus. Of these 3 brushes, which one would you rather paint eyes with? Now I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most people would probably pick this one, simply because it's the smallest. And eyes are the smallest part of the model, and so you should obviously use the smallest brush, right? Well, I disagree. Not only because it's a worn out old tired brush that doesn't hold a point anymore, but we'll ignore that, because this brush can't hold a lot of paint. And so you pick up the paint off of your wet palette, you go to the model, and by the time you get to the model, it's partially dried out, and so you're running like half dried paint onto your model from the brush, and it's very difficult. Yes, good, the biggest one, correct. And the point I was going to make, which you seem to already know, but it's worth telling anyone else, I think there's 2 people watching apparently, so for the other person watching, a big brush holds a lot of paint, and so it's going to stay wet for longer. So long as it comes to a sharp point, then it's going to stay, then it's going to be able to do eyes. I never had any luck with cocktail sticks. That was a trick from way back when. And a cocktail stick doesn't hold the paint in the same way. Like, a brush holds paint in between all of the bristles, and it holds it there with surface tension. And you have loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of surface tension because you have loads of surface area from each of the individual bristles. Whereas with a single cocktail stick, you only have the surface of one stick, so it's tiny in comparison. So you're not able to run the paint from a cocktail stick off in anywhere near as smooth as you can from even a brush that's the same size as the cocktail stick. Do I have a cocktail stick for comparison? I don't think I do. I mean, I probably do somewhere, but I don't know where one is to hand. So yeah. Otherwise, when it comes to painting eyes, the other good information is the dilution of paints has to be just right. Too thin and it's going to pull like a wash. Too thick and it's going to kind of blob and cover too much of an area. But that's kind of that standard information that you probably know already. And otherwise just get a really good grip on it, on the model, so that you can hold the brush in exactly the right place. My painting method for eyes has changed slightly recently, but I pretty much always come in from the side to do the whites. So I come in from the side to do the whites of the eyes, and that's on both. So I end up with a stripe of white, like just a horizontal line, and then I'll come in with the darker color, black or brown, and do a horizontal line, and I might get some on the cheek, and I don't mind that, as long as the eye has a black line in the middle of the white line, kind of at 90 degrees, because then I can come back and paint the cheek with the skin color, and the rest of the face still looks good, and the eye looks, well, just about like an eye. I didn't actually have to clean up any of it this time. That's just the black stripe. There's a little bit on his eyelid, but that's beyond my ability to paint, I think. Well, saying that, this model as a whole is not a good example of how well I can paint. I can paint a lot better than this, but I can't sculpt any better than this, because this is the one that I sculpted. But yes, we're getting sidetracked. I was ending the stream. Thank you very much for coming along. Thank you, Wandering Celt, for your many comments. Thank you to I saw a couple of others. I can't remember any of them. Whoever was here. I know Paul and Nicholas were here earlier, and Arnold Adfelt. I apologise for forgetting your name, but you've gone. You're not even here. You're not watching, so that's fine. Well, yes. Let's end the stream. Thank you for watching. I have other things along the way. There's a description box down below, and other videos on the way as well. So I shall see you next week for another live stream. Bye bye.